Welcome back. A federal judge ruled one of President Trump's cabinet members broke the law while he was working as a federal prosecutor in a child sex ring case. Did you hear what I just said? We were talking about President Trump's labor secretary, Alexander Acosta. The judge said while Acosta served as the Miami U.S. attorney, he violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Acosta and other federal prosecutors collaborated with lawyers of hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein to arrange a sweetheart plea deal. Dozens of underage girls say they were sexually abused by Epstein in a sex trafficking ring. But the deal granted immunity to Epstein and many of his unidentified accomplices, really rich guys. The deal also concealed all charges, victim information, and shut down an ongoing FBI probe into the case. Epstein pleaded guilty to just 2 state charges of prostitution, and he spent only 13 months in a county jail. But yesterday, the judge stopped just short of overturning the entire deal. And now there's growing focus on Acosta's role in all of this. Acosta now heads an agency with oversight over human trafficking and child labor, and he has yet to explain why he sealed the deal with an accused child sex trafficker. Today, the White House says it is, quote, looking into the matter. I'm joined now by the Miami Herald investigative reporter, Julie Brown, who I'm eternally grateful for the unbelievable reporting on this majorly important story. Julie was awarded the prestigious George Polk Award for her work there. It was published in a 3-part series called Perversion of Justice. I'm also joined by former federal prosecutor and my good friend, Glenn Kirschner. My goodness. Julie, Acosta was nominated as labor secretary in 2017. Now he oversees child labor and human trafficking. He released this statement through a spokesperson that I got to be honest, I didn't even understand. I'm going to read a portion of it. The office's decisions were approved by departmental leadership and followed departmental procedures. This matter remains in litigation, and thus, for any further comment, we refer you to the Department of Justice. You know what? Maybe I'm actually going to go to Glenn. You're my legal beagle. What in the world does that mean?
You know, that's a whole lot of bureaucratic nonsense is what that is, Steph, because, listen, Acosta has been caught, indeed by a federal judge, having violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Let me tell you, that act came into existence in 2004, and I know the exact month because I was supervising about 25 to 30 federal prosecutors at the time, and we had to move at light speed to absorb it, understand it, train our prosecutors on it, and make sure we upheld every single right that victims now had under the law. And to see this reporting, remarkable reporting, as you said, that Acosta violated the rights of the most vulnerable victims. These are young girls, young ladies who were being sex trafficked, who were being abused by Epstein, who were being sexually assaulted, who were being given to other men to be sexually assaulted. And the deal that Acosta struck is criminal, literally criminal, because he violated the rights that these victims had to be heard, to know what the deal was, to object to the deal in open court to the judge. And guess what? If the judge decided to accept the deal over their objection, these victims had a right to appeal it to an appellate court. And I'll tell you, this makes my blood boil as a former federal prosecutor.
It's not just Epstein, though. We keep just saying his name over and over. Julie, do you believe the full list of charges against Epstein will be released, but also actually who was in that all-star inner circle? I mean, it is the elite in business and politics.
Well, there certainly were a lot of people complicit in this, in Epstein's crimes. We know the names of a few of the women that were involved. They were recruiters who initially started out being probably sexually trafficked or abused when they were young, and we know that from his victims that once they became 17 or 18 years old, they were automatically too old for him. So what he did was he sort of transferred them into into being recruiters for him and bringing him more young girls. So this was almost like a pyramid scheme where, as they aged out, so to speak, they became recruiters. So we know that there were a lot of other people, recruiters. Of course, there were Johns that were involved in this. We don't know all of whom they are. The FBI files they've been releasing them gradually over the past year or so, but most of those documents are heavily redacted. They're unreadable.
But why?
So,
Glenn, go legal with me. Why are they heavily redacted? Who are they protecting? What would the reasoning be?
Well, listen, when you have juvenile victims, and it sounds like most or all of the victims were juveniles, then we regularly redact. We don't even put a juvenile's name in an indictment, which would be a public record. So we try to take pains to protect the victims. Of course, you know, that's a little ironic because the U.S. attorney at the time, Acosta, not only was not trying to protect the victims, but he was violating their rights. And
okay, just stay on that for a moment, because you obviously always want to protect a victim, but these victims were misled. They were misled about the FBI investigation being terminated.
They were misled, and, you know, they're involved in this litigation right now, and I think it's Judge Mara gave the parties 15 days to report back how in the world are they going to address what has now been fined as a violation of federal law by the prosecutors in this case. It's going to be really interesting to see, frankly, what the victims and their lawyers choose to do, because let me tell you, it's kind of a hollow victory when you say, well, you know what, we can void the non-prosecution agreement. We can begin to consider bringing federal charges again. But all these years later, guess what? The victims.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.